My name is Andrew Paul Keiper, and I'm an artist who lives and works in Baltimore, Maryland, where I'm a professor at the Maryland Institute College of Art. My connection to the bombing of Hiroshima is that my grandfather was an engineer who contributed work to the Manhattan Project. This was a fact that I grew up knowing about, kind of a little bit of family lore, but we didn't really know what he did, right? And to this day, it remains a mystery exactly what he did. Although in my research, I'm getting closer to having an understanding and kind of tracing down exactly where he was and what he might have been up to. I didn't begin my research into the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb, and certainly not in connection with my artwork, until grad school, until I met Kei Ito, my collaborator. We were housemates and classmates at MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art. And pretty soon after we met, we had a conversation about where we were from and where our families were from. And he told me that his grandfather was in Hiroshima when we dropped the atomic bomb there. And took a breath and told him, well, my grandfather helped to create the atomic bomb. And so we immediately vowed that we would go on to collaborate one day on this theme. I was lucky soon, after we graduated, to get to full-on collaborate with Kei on a piece that we showed here in Baltimore. And this began my really kind of research in earnest as my main focus of my artistic and professional practice, and kind of really thinking about issues around the atomic bomb and imagining the sounds around the creation of the first atomic bombs and other things related to that, right? It's been really wonderful collaborating with Kei and seeing my work in conversation with what he does, and working together to create installations and things that neither of us could imagine or pull off on our own. So one of the reasons why my work deals with a lot of secrecy and hidden things is that unlike Kei, who knows a lot about what his grandfather experienced during and after World War II. My grandfather was a very secretive man, at least certainly in regards to his work and as well as a certain aspect of his personal life. And so I don't know exactly what he did, even though I'm getting closer to the answer to that. And so my work has been by necessity kind of looking into these secret hidden things and places, right? Another part of it, though, is that I'm just fascinated with trying to imagine things that no one heard, no one could hear, because if they heard them, they might be killed by them, right? So it's pretty fun for me to gather as much kind of evidence and research as I can to kind of think about what these things might have sounded like and recreate these spaces and places and times. It's meant to add up to something different than simply a documentary. So there are two main ways that I work in creating the soundscapes and things that I do. One is to make field recordings. So for Afterimage Requiem, for instance, Kei and I went out to New Mexico, to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and the area around it, as well as close as we can get down to the Trinity test site. And I made recordings in these places of natural environmental sounds, things like birds and insects and foliage blowing and wind, and very evocatively for me, a truck going by the highway in the middle of the night, kind of near the Trinity test site. What's more, I made some recordings at the site of the first nuclear reactor in Chicago, which is, on a college campus, and the building is no longer there. Just there's a monument to commemorate the spot. It just sounds like a city there, right? But for Kei and I, it's really important to go to the places where these things happened and see and understand them and maybe make artwork there or take away something of the place, right? And kind of transform it through what we do to kind of reflect back onto it and maybe in a certain way take some power from it, right? It's almost kind of magical thinking, but that helps us structure what we do. Having field recordings part of my practice has really kind of driven me to investigate some of these places, these kind of corners of the world that might be a little hard to get to, but You learn a lot about what the people who lived and worked there did by going there. So a lot of my artwork, especially my artwork that takes the form of installations, is not just about listening to a recording, but about engaging with it physically, right? Typically for installations, especially like Afterimage Requiem, I'll have more than one or two loudspeakers, right? And the loudspeakers are playing different things so that you have a little bit of choice about what you're hearing, right? So there's not a sweet spot. There's not a bunch of loudspeakers in a circle around you. The loudspeakers are typically arrayed in such a way that there's a push and a pull between them. So you're kind of encouraged to walk closer to them, or maybe you're repelled from them. But you're making choices about what you're hearing, right? For me, listening is very political, right? And it's about making choices. You choose to hear something, to listen to something, to try to understand it through that listening, or not? Do you reject it? Do you reject it in preference for something else, right? And so in the work that I do with Kei Ito, that dynamic is further kind of complicated by the presence of his elements, which are often, like in Afterimage Requiem, chromogenic prints, right? So as you look at his work and maybe walk around his work, you're listening and kind of building relationships in your head between what I've done and the choices I'm encouraging you to make between the different elements of the sound that you're listening to and what you're seeing. So it's meant to be a very bodily experience, and it's my hope that when my audience leaves an exhibition of my work, that the way they listen to the world and to things around them are at least temporarily, but hopefully for longer than that, changed.